All right, welcome to the show today. My guest today is Robert James Collier. He's an entrepreneur and TEDx speaker based in Dallas, Texas. Now, as entrepreneurs and business people, we all know the value of cultivating a strong network. And early in his career, Robert saw this too. He was attending a lot of networking events, but saw a big problem with these. They're all about slinging business cards and taking from other people. Out of a growing frustration from attending these transactional events, Robert founded Entrepreneurs Dinner, a unique event which brings together a highly curated group of like-minded entrepreneurs who are looking to serve. Attendees help each other overcome their biggest business challenges while enjoying a dinner prepared by private chefs. These events take place anywhere from private yachts to villas, and attendees walk away having built lifelong friendships and business connections. He's helped over 100 entrepreneurs to accelerate their business success by gaining greater emotional clarity to fulfill their vision, meeting 1 to 2 life-changing mentors per quarter, and developing long-term partnerships to reach their financial goals even faster. He's also shared the same platform with former President Bill Clinton, Tony Robbins, and Richard Branson. I wanted to bring Robert on the show to discuss how he started and grew Entrepreneurs Dinner, what separates these events from regular networking events, and to find out what's next for him. So Robert, welcome to the show.
James, thank you so much, man. That was an awesome introduction you just provided. I appreciate you doing your homework in advance of us speaking. It's been a long time coming, so thank you for having me on, brother.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. I'm glad we could finally connect. So I thought an interesting place to start would just be a bit about your background and your story, because it sounds like you were always pretty entrepreneurial. I read that in college you actually started a software business on the side, and it was actually starting to get a bit of traction. You were getting some interest from Fortune 500 companies. So I was wondering if you could just explain a bit about your background and what this business was back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is, just growing up in Texas and just being naturally just kind of drawn to entrepreneurship and wanting to own my own efforts. I mean, I remember being a kid and we'd have those, going to high school and in middle school, we'd have those candies that we would, sell and give to other people. And I remember having the candies, having sold the amount that I needed to, but then like getting extras from friends and then selling those and like keeping all the profits for myself. Like, not it just kind of came naturally. And so, in high school, I found a way to do this like betting thing with NFL games where I would have people bet on games and then I would basically act as a banker, but I would set up these bets in a way where I just felt like I would always come out on top and making money and just starting different business all throughout, and didn't know at the time that that was entrepreneurial. It just kind of came natural to me. So when I was in college, I went to the University of Texas at Tyler. And at that time, I was part of a student organization called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise, now known as Enactus. And while part of that student organization, I thought of this project that immediately I knew was really going to have the potential to change not only my life, not only the student organization for the better, but potentially thousands and even millions of people. And that idea was doing live online interviews between students and employers for postgraduate and internship positions. So in other words, that's using mediums like Skype and combining that with something like a video resume to provide an employer a more well-formed perspective of what they could offer. Rather, a candidate could offer to an employer. So at the time, it was actually pretty advanced. We weren't doing a lot of video communication like we are now. In fact, I remember pitching the idea, and the biggest hesitancy was, what if, are we allowed to see candidates? What if there's like, racial bias and stuff like that that's going on? So this would have been back in 2002, 2003. And some of the traction that we had from it was we ended up co-hosting a career fair. So at that time, I was living in Washington, D.C., so I was actually away from Texas. I was part of this academic fellowship living on Capitol Hill. And then we had 6 people who were working on this business who co-hosted a career fair with the University of Texas. So we invited over 60 businesses. We had, I think 20 of which were Fortune 500 companies, and we used it as an opportunity for us to basically solve the chicken and egg problem, which is you need students on there,
Yeah.
but you also need companies. And so we found
Yeah.
that as a way to get both. So we had students on there, recording pre-recorded interviews. We had companies that we would pitch to and ask them, "Hey, would you be interested in something like this?" And they said, "Yeah." Like a lot of them wanted to talk to the higher level up, McDonald's, Sherwin-Williams, Fortune 500 companies. And so we just kind of proceeded with it. We ended up introducing it into University of Texas classroom. We started gaining some traction, but a little bit later, because of my experience in Washington, D.C., I thought I wanted to become an attorney. I was working for the American Bar Association. I didn't think I could do both, so I actually ended up putting Interview Me Live to the side. But um,
Mm-hmm.
I've always had that sort of interest in business, entrepreneurial pursuits, and really just the creativity of introducing an idea into the world.
Mm. That's awesome. And I love that problem solving as well, solving the chicken and the egg problem, because that's always the hardest part with that sort of business. You've got the two sides of the market that you've got to appeal to at the same time. So it's a good solution for that. And so you mentioned that you were looking to become an attorney, but that ended up not happening. You actually ended up going and working for a startup in Michigan. So it sounds like that was a pretty sweet job. You could basically work from anywhere. You were paid well. You were doing work that sounded pretty interesting. So I was wondering, first of all, why did you decide to move from becoming an attorney to this startup in Michigan? And then why did you actually want to end up leaving that job, which did sound like a pretty good gig?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, man. So around the time that we were working on Interview Me Live was the same time that I realized, man, I would really like to become an attorney. And I didn't think that I could run this startup at the same time as studying for the LSAT and going to law school. So I had to make a choice. It was going to be one or the other. And while this startup idea for Interview Me Live, the business that I just described, was promising, I really thought that I wanted to become an attorney. In fact, I wanted to go to Georgetown Law School. So I put aside the Interview Me Live concept, and I also at that time I needed to earn a living, right? I had just moved away from college. I moved back home with my parents, and I needed to have income, but I didn't want a job. So naturally, I put my entrepreneurial skills to use, and I created I created a website called writeyourpaper.com. And essentially, what I did is I wrote papers for college students. And that's what I did. I wrote papers for undergraduate students as well as MBA students. Um, I earned up to $1,000 a week part time,
Wow.
and I was making money and then using all the other time to then study for the LSAT. And I knew that I needed to make a high grade on the LSAT, and not having that time to study would prohibit me, but also making sure that if I had something that I enjoyed doing, which was writing papers, that I could do it. So wrote papers for college students, studied for the LSAT, and then funny thing happened. I ended up going on this meditation retreat, and a 10-day long meditation retreat. And then at the end of that, I realized a couple things. One, I really enjoyed the startup life. Like I really enjoyed business. There was something there. I really want to pursue that. And two, don't, I didn't want to earn money in the way that I was with Write Your Paper. So
Mm.
with writeyourpaper.com, again, I was earning up to $1,000 a week part time. Our students were, I think, getting an average of a 94 or 96 on their paper. So they were doing really well. I was getting people that was coming back to me writing. I enjoyed writing, so it was cool, but it wasn't illegal, but it was immoral, right?
Yeah.
One of those gray area type things.
Yeah.
And so I decided I didn't want to make money that way. So I closed that down, and I also stopped studying for the LSAT. And so what happened was when I closed that down, I had a person who informally advised me on my startup Interview Me Live. He's also good friends with my dad. he found out that I was no longer interested in becoming an attorney. And so he told my dad, he said, you should tell Rob to look at working at our company. He had had some previous experience with me, kind of known about me. And so he said, you should talk to Rob about joining our company. And brilliant guy. And I don't say that term lightly, brilliant guy. So he basically offered me an opportunity to come work for a startup in Detroit, Michigan. He uh, put me on a plane to Detroit, Michigan. He put me up in a hotel for 5 months, and he offered me to work on a project of my choosing.
Mm.
I mean, at 23, 24 years old, that's a pretty sweet gig. Oh, and he
Yeah.
gave me a company car too.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So like he just gave me a really great opportunity to come work for this startup, which I just expressed, was something I was interested in. So I took it. I went up to Detroit. I was 23, 24 years old. Uh, my background, I received a degree in finance with a minor in political science. So it's more of a business background. But what I chose to do was basically database administration. I was what was called a wiki database administrator. And it was just this project that allowed me to learn a little bit more about database administration. I felt like it was going to help the company move forward. And so
Mhm.
I basically just got their products and services. I put them inside this wiki database that internally people could use, but externally people could know more about the products and services we offered. And it was completely new to me. I didn't know how to do it, but it allowed me a challenge, an opportunity to learn more. And 23, 24 years old, I ended up having an assistant that helped worked with me on it. I was making, okay money, nothing great, but I was making okay money.
Mhm.
And the CEO that invited me up there was, meeting with me, and he was pouring into me and giving me advice. And so it was a really sweet gig, man. And throughout that time, I ended up being promoted. I went from that wiki database administrator to an account manager. Like you mentioned, I was making pretty good money. Um, so what happened, um, a little bit of a detour, but what happened was in 2014, uh, my dad ended up having a double lung transplant surgery.
Mm.
And so he has an autoimmune disease called scleroderma, which made his lungs hard and fibrous.
Mm.
And his lungs actually stopped being useful. In fact, they put him onto the double lung transplant list, and they basically didn't think he'd have long to live, and he ended up having the double lung transplant. In fact, when they opened up his chest, they said he would have been dead within 48 hours had he not had that transplant. They had no idea it was that
Wow.
bad.
Wow.
So I moved from Detroit, Michigan to Dallas, Texas, so I could be close to working with my family.
Yeah.
So part of me being able to work from home was because I wanted to be back in Texas. So work from home, I was working this job, making pretty good money, but I still realized that there was more that I wanted to do, and I wanted to be able to, scratch that itch of starting my own thing, have my own business, man. Like,
Yeah.
so even though I was making this money, um, I ended up eventually walking away from that and pursuing my own business, which became Entrepreneur's Dinner.
Yeah. That's great background story, and it makes sense as well. You just have that itch that entrepreneurs that so many people have, and you need to scratch it. So I totally get it. So you end up moving back to Dallas, as you said, to be close to your father and your family during that period. And at that point, you were going to lots of networking events because you saw the value in sort of cultivating relationships and doing that kind of activity. And you discovered there was a big problem with most of those events. So I was wondering if you could talk about what was the problem with all these events you were going to.
Yeah, man. When at the time when I was going to networking events, and I still see this a lot now, you go to different networking events and it just seems so salesy, man. You're going there and you're going to meet with people. People don't feel comfortable, and you kind of just feel that awkward energy in the room. Like people feel like they got to be somebody else. Their chest is out a little bit more than maybe they normally would be by themselves, and they feign this interest in what it is that you have to say, but Perhaps they're not really interested. They're just kind of waiting to talk more about their company, what it is that they do. And it's just a really like awkward, ineffective setting, and when I look at it, I see this transactional nature that occurs where someone's talking just so that you can listen to them pitch you on an idea or sell you on a product or service or get you to join, potentially their company, or just so that they can talk themselves. And it's just like, man, that's not at all where I want to be. And what I see is this microcosm of what's wrong with that, and that's the business card, right? Like people hand out these business cards. They're like, "Yeah, give me a call," and they give you this visitor card, and it's like, man, like no, like I didn't even enjoy this conversation. Like, why would I give you a call to talk more about your business? Like, let's actually form a real connection before you start handing me this business card. And so this business card to me was just this microcosm of everything wrong with networking, the transactional nature, the sleaziness, just everything. Um, and so what I saw wrong was just the entire model and just everything that was going on with it, and I just felt like it really needed to be disrupted.
Mm. Yeah, totally get it. And I think myself and everyone listening has probably most definitely been in one of those situations where you're at one of those events where people are just slinging around cards and trying to pitch you something. So I totally get that and have experienced that. So talk to me about how that led to Entrepreneurs Dinner. Could you maybe just give a bit of could you tell us a story of the first dinner you actually hosted and how that came about? Where was it? How did you get people to attend? Where did the idea even come from at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was birthed from that frustration of attending those events, seeing what was wrong in the space, while also recognizing that now being in Dallas, I had a bunch of friends who were entrepreneurs or entrepreneurial and wanted to start their own business, but they didn't know each other. And so I wanted to form some way that they could get to know each other without having that shit that happens at all the networking event, all that the bad like just turn off stuff that happens at those networking events. And so I decided to the way that it started is that I posted on Facebook a status saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about putting together an event for entrepreneurs, for bloggers, for models, for artists, etc., to get together. If I did that, would you be interested?" And I received 64 comments back, and that let me know, okay, so if I put this together, then there is an interest there. So now let's get to
Mm,
work. Let's actually get this started. So I knew that I didn't want to have it at that traditional, network style stuff. And I had this idea, why don't we, if what's wrong with the networking scene is it feels really salesy, let's get rid of that. Like, let's ban business cards from the event. Let's tell people they're not welcome. Let's get rid of that thing, which to me stands as this microcosm of everything wrong with networking. So I banned business cards. I told people not to bring them.
mhm,
Um, I know that a lot of networking events are held at um, business places, or held at hotels, and just this environment that's not really conducive to creating a connection. So I said, what can we do to get around that? And I thought, what's more what's more personable than a home?
mm,
Like having it inside someone's home, that familial feeling, that vibe of just personal one-to-one connection. So I wanted to host it at a home. And even further, what's a better way to connect than over food?
mm,
That, the term breaking bread together comes from that. We connect in a way over food, and we have for centuries, unlike any other form of connection that we have. This idea of sharing a meal, breaking bread with one another, really is so intimate and personable that I wanted to combine those elements. And so combining those elements, I knew that, if done right, we could get around what was wrong in the networking events. So I posted that, I got the feedback, I had this idea of how we could formulate something that people would actually want to come to, that people would actually get a benefit from being in and wouldn't feel sold to, right? By
mm,
banning business cards and all those things. Then I got to work. And I said, okay, my entrepreneurial mind kind of kicked in and said, okay, how can we not only how can we make this a great event and special, but how can I prepare myself that if there's something here, if this thing has legs, that we can move forward in the future. So the first thing I thought is, let's get a videographer, and let's get a videographer that can record this, capture the experience, and then be able to story tell in such a way that if we do another one, it actually shows the story of this event. So I ended up finding an award-winning videographer. He loved the concept, loved the idea, and he was a little bit out of my price range for it, but he loved it so much. He said, "You know what? I'll do it for free." He's like, "If you're bringing entrepreneurs there, if you can recommend me to some of those entrepreneurs, I'll do it. Let's do that." So awesome. Got the videographer on board. I had some friends who were chefs, custom chefs, and so I asked one of my friends who's a chef. He's like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I fucking love that idea. Let me see if I can talk to a couple of friends who might be interested." So he talked to his friends. Boom, we had chefs on board. Four people in total between creating food, these custom style menus. I'm not like a big foodie person, but man, they were like some kimchi style something or other. It's like fish this and some really good drinks and stuff. So they got the cocktails and they're in. Boom. So we got the videographer, we got the food, we got the drinks. Like, all right, now we just need to figure out where the home is. So then I asked my parents. Um, I said, can we host the dinner here? Tell you, I got a lot of feedback from my dad. He wasn't super open, but my mom was pretty open to it. And after a while, we talked, and they were down. They were like, "Yeah, you can host it here." So we got the videographer, we got the food, the beverage, we got the home, and then I just started in and wanted to make sure that we got the right people there. So I think what I did is I added up what I thought the expenses would be, and then divided by the number of people that I thought were going to attend. So we came out to a ticket price of $33, not really to make money, mostly to cover expenses. And then we ended up having 14 people that attended the dinner. I brought everybody outside. I put everybody into this big circle. And the circle is so symbolic, man. Like, you think about connection, you think about intimacy, and just this idea of a closed circle where everybody's facing each other, everybody's communing with one another, they're getting to know one another. I got everybody into this big circle, and I had each person share what their business is, what their biggest challenge or hurdle in business is, and then most importantly, how they could help others. Right? Again, I wanted to get away from that salesy environment. I want people to have this give first mentality, and I wanted to infuse everything about this dinner to support that give first mentality. So I put everybody in a big circle. I'm seeing people's face light up as they share the stories about themselves. They're talking about things that they had never shared with one another. Another thing I do is I have people break ice with a question like, "What's one thing that you've never shared with anybody else?" So people are telling stories about really personal things. Like, one woman shared how she gave up one of her children for adoption, and she's never shared that publicly, right? Another person was talking about just challenges that he went through of being a disabled painter, disabled artist. I mean, just really bonding while also sharing about her business and also how we can help one another. So after this big circle that was done outside, we walk inside, and immediately, I mean, it's crazy. These people went from strangers to now talking to one another, sitting, having this bond, having this mutual connection. Uh, then we have this good sit down, dinner, and people are just vibing out, eating with each other, really experiencing and enjoying the food. And at the end of it, um, basically one person just said, "So when's the next one?" I was like, "Oh, okay, all right, yeah." So I was like, I don't know. I guess we'll have to figure that out. We'll have to put together another one. And so from there, I knew that we had something, because when I looked around the room, and I even mentioned this, like, at the end of it, we were all standing up and we were all shoulder to shoulder, and it looked like a big family. Like, at my table at my parents' house for Thanksgiving, we're all just around each other. We're all circled up, and we're just shoulder to shoulder as a family. And I said to everybody in the room, I said, my mom would be so proud right now, because around Thanksgiving we have this exact same experience, and everybody came here as strangers. You guys didn't know anybody else but me, and now we're sitting here together like a family. So I
Yeah.
knew from those two things, from just the amount of connection that was created in a short period of time, but also that that person asked me when's the next one, that we had something there. And so from
Yeah.
there, the Entrepreneurs Dinner was born.
It's a cool story. And a few things that you said in that story that really resonated with me is how you you pre-validated it right at the start. So you didn't just decide out of the blue to hire this videographer and organize this dinner and put it all together. You actually posted that Facebook post asking people, is this something they would be interested in? And you got a massive response. So I think the idea of pre-validating the idea in that way is great. And then getting all these people together with a give first mentality, just getting rid of those business cards. And I think it's important as well when there was that moment when someone asked you, when's the next one? That's the validation that this could be a thing. And then, yeah, you obviously took it from there. So I love it. And I was curious, can you tell the story? Because something happened on the second dinner that you hosted. The first one seemed to go well and everyone loved it, but there was a few more challenges on the second dinner you hosted. So I was wondering if you could tell that story of what happened there.
Yeah, man, that was yeah, that second dinner was great in so many ways and a nightmare in others. So after the first dinner, because the person asked when's the next one, I knew that we wanted to carry on the momentum and develop another dinner that we could go to. So we ended up searching around other homes, right? Because I didn't want to host my parents' home. I wanted to make sure that we had a variety in terms of the homes, but I wanted to be another nice home. So we kind of drove around, and I ended up finding this real estate developer with a great home. In fact, it was the first home that I chose to visit. You know, I had a list of a few homes that I wanted to visit and speak with, but we found this real estate developer, told me the idea, and he loved it. Like off the bat, he was like, "You guys can use my home." He's like, "I'll do you one better. You don't have to pay me for it.
Hmm.
Like you guys can use this home, enjoy it for your dinner." And yeah, he's like, I love the idea. Let's do it." So it started off so great. Like he just bought in an idea. He loved the creativity around it, being entrepreneurs. I'm sure he saw value in bringing them to his home as a real estate developer. And we ended up hosting the dinner there. This one we bumped the prices up, I think, to double to 66, which for me at the time was a lot. I was like, man, this sounds like a lot of money to charge for people to come to these dinners. But we had more people than even the first time. I think that one we had 18 people. People had seen the video from the first dinner. They loved it. They wanted to come to the second one, and so we got a good group of people. At this home, we had rentals that we paid for, so we bought rental equipment. We made sure that we had tables set up. I mean, it's a multi-floor home. Downstairs, this big open style home with a nice bar and a good area for everybody to stand up and sit around. And then the second floor was really beautiful, just kind of overlooking the first floor. Had rooms for tables to be set up, just like beautiful chandeliers. And so we decided to put tables upstairs so that way people could have that circular thing that I talked about from the first dinner downstairs, and then make their way upstairs for the dinner, this really nice private chef dinner. Um, so we rented the tables. We had a bar stand, had somebody tending the bar. We had private chefs doing the dinner. We even had an artist that was painting there, and just kind of showing his paintings and stuff like that. So really
Cool.
just nice, yeah, nice upgrade from the first dinner. And what happened was, prior to this dinner happening, the person who allowed us to use his home, his dog apparently was dying, and he was a single man, and so naturally his dog was his best friend, and his dog was dying, so there was some concern that perhaps we wouldn't be able to have it there. And this happened like maybe 2 days before, so people have already bought tickets, and he's kind of expressing some concern that perhaps people may not be able to come. We might not be able to use the home. So we're talking to him, and I'm talking to him over the phone. I'm asking to make sure he's okay, and he's like, "Yeah, you guys can still use it. I appreciate you asking. Just once it's over, we'll just kind of see what happens. He's like, we'll see what happens with the dog. So day of comes, and he said, it's cool. No, no, you guys can do it here. There was some um, some misunderstanding. I guess he kind of, once the people were coming in with the rental equipment, he kind of flipped out on them. I think they were making
Mm.
too much noise, and he didn't want to make sure that the dog wasn't disrupted by it. But overall, he said it was fine. So we're hosting the dinner there. As I mentioned, it's nice, it's beautiful, paintings and all this stuff. And then I went outside to speak to him on the phone, to tell him that it looked like we were going a little bit longer than expected. That dinner was expected to be, I want to say, 3.5 hours, and we were looking at probably about 4 hours, maybe 4.5 at most, for us to complete the dinner. And so out of respect, I wanted to call him and let him know we were looking at potentially being 30 minutes longer. And man, he just flipped shit. He just flipped shit unexpectedly. He was just like, "What? I told you not to have this dinner here. I told you my dog was dying and you insisted that we have it here." He just yelling over the phone. I'm just so surprised, just blindsided by this. Like, he told me not to have the dinner here. We wouldn't be here if he told us not to have it here, we insisted. What's going on? I was genuinely confused.
Mm.
But I understood that he might be going through a lot because his best friend was dying. And so I'm trying to talk to him calmly, and it just wasn't happening. So he told us that we needed to be out of there by a certain time, or else he was calling the cops.
Mm.
Now, part of me wanted to push back on that, thinking, you know, not only is that rude, not only is that extremely like challenging to be out, which, by the way, it was about 14 minutes after he called me, basically to be outside the house.
Mm.
But then the other part of me not only had compassion for him, but also recognized, um, just frankly, as a black man who was responsible for the people inside the house with other people of color, men, women. I didn't want them to be in a situation where not only they felt threatened, but also there was a potential for something bad to happen um, at that place. And so I made the decision to be out the house by that time.
Mm.
So I walked back into the house and I told the person who was assisting me, "Hey, this is what happened. We need to be out in 14 minutes." And mind you, I mean, we had rental equipment. I mean, just the
Mm.
equipment itself took over, I would say, probably an hour to put inside the house.
Mm.
Mind you, breaking it down, all this other stuff, just the rental equipment alone, plus cleanup, plus food, plus people eating,
Mm.
like, to do all this in 14 minutes was basically impossible.
Yeah.
And the person who was assisting me told me that. She's like, "There's no way we could do that, but not only that, like, screw him. Let's hold it here." And she couldn't understand, and I didn't have the time to tell her that I didn't want to put these people in danger. Having the police come out, being, again, people of color, like, I just didn't want that possibility. Not knowing what would happen, but I didn't want that possibility to take to fruition. So she actually became angry. She didn't want to help me out because she felt I wasn't listening to her. So again, just go into executive mode. Okay, this is what needs to happen. I talked to the chefs calmly, told them what needed to happen. I talked to our group. I didn't tell them what needed to happen. I just told them that we were closing down the dinner for the evening. Um, and so behind the scenes, the chefs are, getting the food, making sure that people were finished on the table, being very polite in doing so. The person who was tending the bar was making sure that the drinks were taken care of and then collecting all the cups. We had other people who were assisting the chefs, making sure the trash is being taken care of. I mean, these people were moving at just light speed, man, and doing so professionally. Our guests were coming down, and I had gifts for them, and I thanked them for coming, and I gave them the gifts, and by the end of it, man, we were all but finished. I mean, we had the trash taken care of. We had the food done. The people leaving the home were smiling. They were saying thank you for the dinner and how special it was, and how they were able to connect with other entrepreneurs. But the only thing that wasn't taken care of was the rental equipment. So
Mm.
the rental equipment was broken down, but we couldn't take it out. I mean, it was impossible for us to do that. And so they asked me what we should do with it. I said, leave it. Leave it in here. We're going to get out of here by 11 o'clock, and we're going to respect his wishes. So we made the impossible happen. I mean, we literally cleaned up everything, and got everybody out of there by that time within 14 minutes, which was just insane by itself. Well, the next day comes around, and I called the person who was allowing us to use his home, and I told him, hey, we did everything, and I asked him how he was doing with his dog, and he was still very, very livid. He just kind of dug into me for about 30 minutes and expressed his disappointment, and I recognized that it wasn't about what happened. He was still very disappointed with his dog.
Mm.
The challenge was that the rental equipment was still there. Now,
Mm.
mind you, this is probably like 10, 20, maybe $40,000 worth of rental equipment. And I asked him, I said, are you going to let the rental company come get it? And he said, no.
Mm.
That is when it became a problem. It wasn't a problem when he threatened to call the police. It wasn't a problem when he said everybody needed to be out by a certain time, which was near impossible. It became a problem when he said that this business couldn't get their assets from his home because he didn't want them to disturb his dog.
Mm.
So I had to find a way to call the owner of the company, let him know the situation, knowing full well that that owner was within his rights to sue me if he chose to for $40,000,
Mm.
because he came into an agreement with me for that equipment, not with the owner of the home. I was
Yeah.
thankful that the business owner understood. He somehow was just compassionate towards my situation. He said, okay, here's what we'll try to do. We'll try to see if we can come to home and see if we can get the rental equipment from him. If not, then we'll have to involve Dallas Police Department. Somehow they were able to get the equipment out. It wasn't until 4 days later. So mind you, over this 4 days, I don't know what the hell is going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to get sued for
Mm.
40,000, which at the time I didn't have. Like, I mean, just starting out in the business, I don't have 40,000 to be sued for. That would have shut the business down before it even started.
Mm.
And what happened was his dog died, and then a couple days later, he allowed the company to come in and get the real
Mm.
equipment. So police didn't need to show up or anything like that. They ended up getting the rental equipment. And a few weeks after that, the owner called me, somewhat apologized for what happened, but that could have been a nightmare scenario, man, where not only would the business die before it started, but I would have been out of 40K that I didn't have.
Yeah.
Um, the best part about it is that when I spoke to the entrepreneurs who attended, they said they had no idea all this stuff was happening. Like no
Mm.
one, I never even shared that story until years later, just out of respect for the person who allowed us to do it in his home. And still to this day, I've never shared any names or anything like that. But it was beautiful that the entrepreneurs that came there, because our staff handled it so well, had no idea that that was even going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Uh, Crazy story, man.
It's insane. And yeah, that's definitely a testament to your professionalism, I guess, which is awesome. And yeah, that's definitely not what you want, especially after the first one went so well. You're probably thinking that it's going to be smooth sailing, and then something always happens to throw a spanner in the works. But I'm glad it didn't derail things before it even started in the end.
Mm.
So yeah, that's great. And so since then, you've hosted a lot more dinners. I think you're up to 7 or 8 now that you've hosted, potentially even more now. I'm curious, what's your vision with Entrepreneurs Dinner? Like, what do you actually want to do with this? So you're hosting these awesome dinners. You're connecting people who are looking to help each other and building this great sort of cultivating this great relationship opportunity for people. Have you got any? What's the long-term vision for the business? Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So first, let me share why I'm doing this, because I think that helps to provide some context. So I believe that entrepreneurs and leaders have this ability to shift and change the world in a way that many people wish they could. Many people aren't don't have the ability to, or simply can't. And entrepreneurs just have this drive, this ambition to see in the world the things that exist only in their mind. They just have this unique ability to bring to reality those things which are in their thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do is I want to help entrepreneurs to continue to grow their businesses, but also to bring impact to the world, right? So some of what we do is we help entrepreneurs to get emotional clarity to fulfill their vision. We help them to meet 1 to 2 life-changing mentors per quarter that will help to grow their business. We help them to form financial partnerships that will reach their financial goals even faster, because that enables them to grow and to help and to bring to the world those things that they want to see. That's the why and the how. The what is Entrepreneur's Dinner. The what is this curated invite-only event that brings together entrepreneurs from across the country to grow their businesses together through relationships. So the long-term vision really is, I want to curate and bring together entrepreneurs to solve some of the biggest problems in the world. That is the long-term vision. The mission is then to create just the most compelling platform for entrepreneurs who want to grow their businesses, who want to serve and connect with the community, and want to give back in a way that builds a legacy for themselves beyond the point at which they're existing. So with Entrepreneurs Dinner, what I see is the ability for us to not only have this where we're attracting entrepreneurs from across the country to currently Dallas, Texas, but then to also replicate this into other cities across the country. So that's not just Dallas, that's also Los Angeles, that's also New York, that's also Austin, Texas, that's also Denver, Colorado, that's also Miami, Florida, and multiple cities across the country, and also potentially internationally as well. Because one thing I know is that entrepreneurs, aside from building their business, they also need connection, right? They need some sort of intimacy that allows them to form connections with other entrepreneurs who are like-minded and also want to build their businesses. So the long-term vision is to continue to facilitate these connections in a way that will help these entrepreneurs to grow their businesses, but also making sure that we're targeting entrepreneurs who have that get first mentality that enabled their businesses not just to grow themselves personally, but also the things that they care about most in the environment, the community, the world as a whole.
It's a great vision. I love it. And I think it's so important because it's hard, especially for the entrepreneurs, to find that sort of community of people who are looking to give and serve. It's hard enough to find people even on a similar journey, just as an entrepreneur, but to then find people who have that giving mentality is even harder. So the fact that you're helping bring those people together with Entrepreneurs Dinner is amazing. And yeah, I love the vision. It's awesome.
Thank you, man.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you did a TEDx talk, which I think is amazing, and I'm really curious about that. So I was wondering how did that opportunity come about? How did you get the opportunity to give that TEDx talk that you did give?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So I was when I was working for my previous company, I was in New York, and I was on social media, and I connected with this woman who just seemed like super interesting and just unique. Um, and I later found out that she was a director for the TEDx in New York. And I just simply asked her, I was just like, hey, do you think that I should give a TEDx talk? And it's one of those questions that, in all honesty, like, I just threw it out there just because I wanted to see her response. But part of me didn't feel like I was capable of it, but part of me knew that I could. Um, But her response was great. She was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, you should give a TEDx talk about how you don't allow business cards at your event. And I was like, oh man, yeah, I'd be open to doing something like that. And so the way that TEDx works is that at least many of them, not all work this way, but you basically go through an application process and you apply to be a TEDx speaker. Now, part of that application process is you talking about your idea, either via video or in a brief summary in the application. And if you do it via video, then you record the video, you post it to YouTube or wherever it is that they can review it. And you have this idea that you communicate, right? So TED is all about spreading ideas in technology, education, design, TED, but spreading ideas that can change the world. And so I didn't really formulate the idea around the business cards, but I had a topic. I had an idea name that I wanted, which was called Business Cards Are Dead. Just this idea that, you know, business cards are no longer there. Are no longer effective, and they're just useless, right? Same idea from that microcosm that everything what's wrong in networking is the business cards. So I ended up just putting up a camera, and I did a quick video showing me just talking about how business cards are dead. I didn't have anything in particular prepared or anything. I just kind of freestyled it. Just quick aside, like my background in college, I was a nationally recognized public debater. So I used to go around the country doing public debate, speaking, won a few tournaments, and so I knew that I had the ability to speak, and I knew that I could even speak kind of off the cuff. And so that part didn't really challenge me. But I knew that if I could just kind of communicate, they would see my ability to communicate, and potentially that would put me ahead of some other people who may had more like well-formed thoughts than I did. So I just got in front of there. I talked about how business cards were dead, and they allowed me to move on to the next stage. Then the funny things that happened throughout that process was that I didn't want to talk about business cards being dead. I thought that was a novelty type idea. Like, yeah, it's cool. It's, you know, it's something that has potential to go viral, but I don't want to be the business cards are dead guy. Like, I don't want to be known as that. Like, if this thing goes viral, like, I'd rather talk about something that means more to me than business cards. And what ended up coming to me was this idea of intimacy. I just noticed this idea of intimacy was just woven throughout the things that I had done in life. It was woven throughout my businesses, like going to entrepreneurs dinner. Obviously, there's that intimacy, there's a personable environment, there's getting to know one another, there's breaking bread. Even going back to Interview Me Live, which we talked about, that video interview. I mean, there's that intimacy of really kind of communicating in a video format, getting to know a person so that they can know what's being offered to the employer beyond just the traditional paper resume. So this idea of intimacy was just woven not only throughout business, but also in personal life. And that's what I wanted to talk about. The challenge was that I sort of came to this realization about 6 weeks before my TEDx talk, which if you know anything about TEDx talks, a lot of people, some people have their talks done 6 months in advance. Many people have practice and know what they're speaking about a few months in advance. And I came and was like, man, I want to change my topic. You know, I want to change the thing that I'm talking about. 6 weeks. They were not cool with it. But I basically just said, you know, I'm going to be speaking, and this is what I want to talk about. And if you guys want me to speak, then this is what it's going to be about. So they kind of got behind it, and ended up doing my TED Talk on intimacy. I called it, "So Why Are Billion-Dollar Brands Chasing Intimacy?" And the idea of the TED Talk was that in an age where people are more connected than ever, people actually report feeling more disconnected. You know, in fact, 72% of people report feeling lonely or isolated, even when surrounded by family and friends. And then I talk about intimacy a little bit and what it means. And I define intimacy phonetically as in, to, me, see. Let's sing into me, a union between the seer and the seen. And so from there, I developed this concept for the TED Talk itself. And then it took a while, but I wrote out the rest of it and, you know, ended up delivering that TED Talk in New York on the topic that I wanted to speak about.
It's cool. Must have been a great opportunity. What and yeah, I listened to your TED talk, and the content itself was great. It's I like the example you used of having your own personal Wilson from
Yeah.
the movie. I forget the name off the top of my head, but yeah, it was a cool talk. Um, so what advice would you have for someone who, if they, let's say they want to give a TED talk, or even if it's not a TED talk, they just want to improve their public speaking? Because it sounds like you were always a good speaker by the sounds of things. You had your debating background in college. Have you got any advice if someone just wants to improve their speaking ability or to deliver a TED talk? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same advice that you'd have for anyone who wants to get good at anything, and that's just simply to do it and do it
Mm-hmm.
often, right? I mean, the more that you do a thing, the better you become. Malcolm Gladwell popularized the term 10,000 hour rule, which was originally coined by Eric Anders, I believe, in the Talent Code, his book called The Talent Code. But the 10,000 hour rule simply states that the difference between an expert in any one field and everyone else who's amateur or below is that the experts deliberately practice 10,000 hours or more.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. And if you want to become great at something, just accumulate the practice hours, the deliberate practice of developing the skill for that thing. And even furthermore, when we talk about or when we think about how we learn, learning is really two things. It's focus, focusing on what that task is, giving your attention to it, and then it's repetition, just
Mm-hmm.
repeating it over and over. I mean, you think about Kobe Bryant playing basketball. It's just simply this act of, putting the right form in place, putting, his hand underneath the basketball, and then just shooting that exact same way every single time. I mean, Kobe Bryant, I think he used to make 1,000 shots per day, and not just shoot, but make, I think, make 1,000 or 3,000, whatever the number is, some ridiculous number. But by him doing that, he was performing, he was repeating that skill more than the person next to him, three,
Mm-hmm.
5, 10 times more than the person next to him, which is why he became such a great shooter, a great scorer. Same thing with speakers. If you practice and you repeat the process of speaking more often, naturally you're going to become better. And if you do it to the point that you've developed 10,000 hours of practice, you are going to become an expert. So my advice to people who want to become better speakers is speak more. And now, how? They might ask how. I don't get asked to speak at different events. I don't have opportunities to speak. How do I become a better speaker? How do I speak more? The way is just so there's so many ways that we can do that in today. You can speak more by speaking up, taking opportunities to present at a company. So if you work for a company and there's opportunities to speak, take more opportunities to speak. If you're a student and there's projects or presentations to give, volunteer to become the speaker for that. Um, you can go to organizations that allow you to speak more, things like Toastmasters that give you the ability to speak more. Join a Toastmasters group. Join other groups where you can take leadership roles and become the speaker, just practicing that way. You can do something like this, like a podcast. Why not start a podcast and give yourself the opportunity to speak more, talk more about things that interest you, interview people that are interesting and up to cool and interesting things. Give yourself the opportunity to speak more on that. Do Facebook Lives, record yourself speaking. Even if you never share these things with anybody else, just record yourself speaking either in front of a mirror or in front of a camera and watch yourself speaking and then rewatch it, replay it, and see the things that you could have done better. Watch other speakers who you love and admire, maybe Barack Obama, maybe a Martin Luther King, maybe I don't know, insert your favorite speaker, Russell Brunson, whoever it is. Watch these speakers, model Gary Vee, model some of the things that they do well in speaking. Watch them, but practice. Just take opportunities to practice. The more that you can speak, the better you become. I know that some of the people who started off, we all start off as a novice in something. So some of the people who are the greatest speakers in the world get paid the most to speak. They started off in the same space, and the way that they got to become great speakers is they took every opportunity that they could to speak, and they did it in a short, condensed period of time. They spoke as much as they could, whether they were being paid for it or not. If they got an opportunity to speak, they took it. They did it in a short period of time, and they became great speakers. So my recommendation for anyone who wants to become better at speaking is speak more.
I love it. That's great advice. It sounds simple, and it is, but yeah, and focusing on, well, having that focus and then the repetition is a really key point, I think. Focusing on actually wanting to become a better speaker, taking on board feedback and just repeating it as much as possible, as you said. And it's funny because I'm definitely not I wouldn't call myself a natural speaker, but as you mentioned, that's almost why I started doing podcasts, why I started doing videos, so that I could actually get that feedback on myself. I'm not necessarily talking in front of a stage, but I can actually review what I've said and what I've done and improve. And so I think that's a good tip, even if you don't get on the stage, just watch yourself. It's pretty humbling if you're not a good speaker to watch back your footage,
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah.
that's awesome, man. And so one thing you mentioned is simple, right? It sounds simple, and you're right. It's simple. It's not easy, right? I
Yes.
mean, you obviously know that developing this podcast, interviewing, researching, and then speaking, and having to hear yourself speak, especially if you're, one of those people who is able to diagnose problems and stuff like that. You like go back, you're like, oh man, I did, what I said was so stupid. Oh man, I'm such an idiot, or whatever the case may be. But over time, that self-talk becomes more positive because we're developing the positive skills that we went after. So kudos to you in developing this podcast in order to become a better speaker, man. And no doubt, like as you're continuing to progress in this, you look back a year, 3 years from now, and you're just gonna like be laughing, like, man, I'm glad I went through that. I'm such a better speaker now, and it was because I made that choice. So props, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Robert. So they're all great tips for speaking. I love that. And I've heard you say as well that something that's really helped you is meditation, just in a few different areas in your life. So I was hoping we could maybe talk about that for a little bit. And I'm curious what is meditation to you and how has it helped you?
Yeah, so people have different definitions of meditation, and I'm not here to advocate one or the other. But for me, what meditation is, it's simply observing the thoughts that are in my mind and not becoming attached to them,
Mm,
right? So it's not so much um, getting rid of thoughts. It's not so much not thinking. It's just simply allowing myself to observe the thoughts as they arise and not being attached to them. In other words, not letting my thoughts run my life, but creating separation between my thoughts and who I am.
mm.
And I think you asked, how did I get involved in sort of how did I get started in meditation? Is that right?
Yeah, yep. How'd you get started and what's your practice like?
So I got started a little bit around the same time that I was doing writing those papers for writeyourpaper.com, and I was looking at becoming an attorney. I just gained an interest in meditation. I think I was just searching. I was seeking some way to better have better performance in my brain, my mind, and so I was
Mhm.
looking for different ways to do that. And I stumbled across meditation. I may have been interested before, I'm not sure, but I started looking up YouTube videos, and I saw Deepak Chopra talking about meditation, how to practice meditation. He was saying, just when you breathe in your mind, say in, and when you exhale in your mind, say out, and try doing that for 5 minutes. And so I would sit in a room with my back against the wall and try to do that for 5 minutes, and it seemed like an eternity. Like there was like no way that I could there's like no way that I could do that, man. Like 1 minute I was like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, this is ridiculous. And but there was something there, and I just knew about some of the scientific benefits of it. I remember reading that people who meditate for 7 years on average are like 14 years younger than their counterparts.
Mm,
I remember reading that whether people were practicing, quote, the right way, unquote, um, they would still get the benefits of meditation.
Mm.
Just simply the act of it, whether it was proper or not, you'd still get a lot of the benefits. And those benefits included, you know, uh, greater peace, greater sense of calm, lower blood pressure, actually things like increased gray matter in the brain, which is responsible for memory and cognitive ability. So all these things were very attractive to me, and I continued practicing. I looked up that I was talking about meditation with a friend of mine, and this friend, who's now one of my best friends, was also into meditation, and he had recently been practicing for a couple of years. And he mentioned two things to me. One is he gave me this book called Autobiography of a Yogi, and for those who haven't read it, it's one of the three most important books I've read in my life, I'd say.
Mm.
Um, and it just opened up this whole new field for me, this whole new field of possibilities. But it followed this yogi. His name is Yogananda, and he brought yoga to the West, to the United States from India, and
Mhm.
it just follows his life. And so reading that book further interests me in meditation. But then also he shared with me this meditation retreat of sorts, where you could go for 10 days and you meditate. There's no talking, there's no cell phones, there's no internet. It's just meditation. And you're
Mm.
meditating for like up to 10, 12 hours a day.
Mm.
And it sounded exactly like something I'd be interested in. I mean, I read up on it. It sounded very intense, but I was deeply interested at the time in this sort of thing. So I ended up going to this meditation retreat, as I mentioned, no talking, no communication, nothing. And I came away, man, and I just felt like I was a different person. I mean, it positively changed my life for the better. Um, I'm a former NCAA athlete, played basketball in high school. I was always playing sports and stuff when I was younger, but this was the most physically and mentally exhausting thing I'd ever done.
Mm. Really?
And you wouldn't expect that with
Yeah.
meditation because you think, yeah, right? Like you think you're just sitting down, not doing much, but man, was it draining.
Wow.
It was draining. So from that just positively changed my life for the better. I was happier coming out of that. That was that same time I mentioned earlier where I recognized that I didn't want to write papers for students because it felt immoral. I recognized, I gained clarity that I was really interested in this startup thing, this business thing. It just helped me out in so many ways in gaining clarity. And so I continued practicing. And so my practice comes from that meditation retreat, that 10-day meditation retreat, and it's called Vipassana. Vipassana is my practice. So the practice that I follow now is basically meditating. At the moment, I'm meditating a, almost an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening.
Mhm.
So it's roughly 2 hours of meditation per day, and I practice that Vipassana technique that they teach us at that meditation retreat.
Mm. That's awesome. So you're still making 2 hours a day almost every day to do that practice. That's incredible.
Thanks.
Um, so can you say specifically like how that, so going to that 10-day meditation retreat, the Vipassana retreat, you said it really helps you. Like, is there, and is it mostly just you gain clarity on things? Is having that space and that like no distractions for extended periods of time, does that just really, I'm just trying to work out like specifically how that helped. Is it just removes you from your day-to-day life and gives you that time and space to think and clarify things? Is that kind of the main benefit, would you say?
Yeah, I think like many things, when you experience something in your life that has this positive effect, you don't realize how great it is until you miss it,
Yeah.
until you no longer have it. And meditation's kind of like that. Like
Yeah.
the benefits are almost so they're so numerous, that you realize how beneficial it is when you stop doing it. Um, but more concretely, to answer you, so for me, for example, I'm a person, I can have an entire conversation in my own head. Like I don't
Mm.
I don't even need to talk to somebody else. So thoughts can consistently just be rapid fire and, yada, yada. And this gave me now a technique and ability to create separation between those thoughts, like moving at a super fast pace. And I could actually calm my brain down. I could calm my mind down. So that by itself was like amazing. Just to have this ability to to go to sleep, and I don't have to be, my mind doesn't have to be racing back and forth. Like, it can actually be calm, and I can actually recognize the thought. Like, it's not just zooming back and forth like a freaking race car, and I can't even like hold on to it, and one thought's going from one to another. I can actually recognize it and can slow down. So that by itself was just huge. Like, man, I can chill out basically. I can chill out on my
Mm,
mind, and I don't have to take a drug to do it, or I don't have to drink, or something else in order to chill. I can actually do this technique, which allows me to chill and gives me a bunch of other benefits.
yeah.
Some of the other benefits were like, I just noticed I was more calm. I've always been, as an adult, I've always been a pretty calm person, but this allowed me to have like a calm inside, not just like from the exterior look calm, but like an inside calm that I didn't have before. Some other things is that I started noticing my brain was functioning better. Like, I could recall information better and more quickly. I could make decisions more quickly. I could process problems and come to a solution at a faster clip and feel more confident in it. And then from the spiritual side, which is like the hardest to quantify, I just felt and knew that I was more in line with my purpose. And
Hmm.
that's probably the greatest benefit, is that there was some sort of spiritual connection that was developing. It was less about theory and intellect and reading, but like actual felt experience. I could feel, man, that I was just being more aligned with this purpose, with this thing that exists, but it's tough to say what it is. And it just, things just started to just felt like they were aligning more in my life. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it. Makes total sense. And I always say it's meditation was one of those things. It's like, as you said, it's like almost like brushing your teeth. If you do it every day, you don't really notice the benefits, but if you stop brushing your teeth for a few days, you really notice. It's kind of
Exactly.
similar to that.
That's a great example. Yeah.
So I love it. And you've also done a ayahuasca retreat, which is something I'm curious to know about. So could you explain what an ayahuasca retreat is and why you decided to do that?
Yeah, so let's see. Ayahuasca, I'm gonna mess this up a little bit because I haven't thought about this in a while in terms of the science of it, but ayahuasca is a sacred brew, a sacred concoction that originated from the Incans in Peru. So it's a plant medicine, um, that has an active ingredient that's referred to as DMT, and this is the part that I'll mess up. It's like dimethyltryptamine or something to that effect. But DMT is the active ingredient in ayahuasca that provides its psychoactive effects.
Mm.
Now, why is DMT important? DMT is important because, or rather, DMT is sourced from all over. DMT is actually in our bodies. We don't fully know exactly how the process plays out, but what we think is that DMT is released when we're born and when we die.
Mm.
Also, we believe that it's released in the pineal gland, which is often referred to as the third eye in between the eyebrows. A lot of spiritual or religious sects and faiths refer to this third eye. And in fact, you'll see it in India. They usually have a marking right there in between the brows. That's the third eye, the pineal gland. And so it's thought that the pineal gland is what releases this DMT. It's also found throughout nature and plants and certain things, which is where this brew is found from. And some people think that it's what plants use to communicate with one another.
Mm.
So that's a little bit about DMT. Now, ayahuasca is a journey, an experience, a retreat that's to be sacred and dealt with respect. And so many people go through this experience, this journey, because they're questing for more knowledge. They want to have a spiritual experience, or they want to learn more. And that was essentially why I wanted to do as well. Um, there's so much that happens in this world, this universe, that we're unaware of, but I think even more accurately, we know that there's something deeper. We just don't know how to experience it. Like, we
Mm.
know there's something more going on, um, but we don't know how to interact with that. And this ayahuasca, this DMT, provides us with the potential of exploring something that's on the other side of reality that we don't normally get the opportunity to experience with. So, um, yeah, so
Yep.
that's why I wanted to. I think that answers your question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what was the actual process like for you actually going through that? And was there any like big things you took away from it or things that you learned?
Um, that again, that shattered a lot of previously that opened like a whole new portal, or possibility of what's available in life. So yeah, it did. The experience was it was kind of wild, man. It was kind of wild. So, you're given the brew, you sip. You can either smoke DMT, or you can drink it in a tea, and we drank it in a tea. The experience can be anywhere from like 2 to 8 hours. Um, and by the way, ayahuasca is probably the most. It's I don't even know if you would classify it as a psychedelic, but if you did, it'd be the most powerful psychedelic, um, like currently known to man. And so it's a very powerful, mind-shattering experience. And so you take the tea, and it kind of takes a little bit of time to kick in, but once it does, man, you're just, the world as you know it, just it's no longer like it's. A lot of people, to describe it's really challenging, um,
Mm.
because it's kind of a thing that words have a limitation in describing it. But a lot of people often refer to this feeling of dying. It feels like you're dying, and I'd say that's accurate. Like, it feels like you've died, and the only way to experience is to surrender to the death. Sounds weird to me talking about it, but it's like surrendering to death and just allowing yourself to die. Then there's also this feeling of being connected to source, being connected to maybe to God, being connected to all things in one. Um, and my experience was very much like that, not just philosophically, not just like theoretically, but like literally. Like, I mean, there was a person just in the middle of the room, just experiencing just a lot of challenges, and she was crying, and I felt all of her pain. And I was literally just saying to myself, not to her, because we're in different areas of the room, but to myself, I love you. It's okay. It's okay, because I felt her pain in my body. Not
Mm.
just heard her crying, not just like felt compassion for her. No, like I felt her pain inside my own body. And I was just saying, I love you. It's okay. I love you. It's okay. I felt other people in the room, and some of the stuff they were going through. And at one point, I thought I was playing the guitar, and it wasn't. I guess somebody else was playing the guitar, but I thought it was me, and I thought I was singing. Like, it's really a different sort of experience, but you come away um, just recognizing like the stuff that we see in the day to day is not the full breadth, it's not the full width of life, of experience. And science supports all this, right? Like, we know that, for example, the light that we see, you and I as human beings, is, I think, only 1 to 3% of light, like the of actual light that we can see. And we know that, this universe, we've identified what's called dark matter, and we know that dark matter makes up 96 or 97% of the actual known universe, and we only get to see, 1 to 3% of actual light and 3% of actual matter. And there's like really this whole big bulk of stuff that's out there that we don't recognize and see. And that ayahuasca allows us a glimpse of that other side and experiencing what that's like.
It's incredible. I know you said it's hard to put into words, but you did a pretty good job of, of
Thanks,
explaining
man.
some stuff there. Have you got any advice for someone if they're looking at that kind of experience, doing like an ayahuasca retreat? Have you got any advice for people who are thinking about that?
Um, I think I want to be careful in giving any advice about that.
Or things that they need to consider, I guess.
Oh man, I think the best way for me to answer this is do your homework, um, know the type of person you are, and you know, as with anything, just be careful. I'm not. Hmm,
I totally get it. You need to,
yeah,
you don't want to,
ju-
it's one of those things that people need to do their own research on and come to their own conclusions. You can't
yeah.
advise someone for it or against it. But
That's You're exactly right. You're exactly
yeah,
right. It's like do your own research on this stuff. Really, if you choose to speak with people who have either experienced it, and based upon your own research, come to your own conclusions. And yeah, I think you said it best, actually.
yeah, cool,
Yeah.
love it. Well, I want to be mindful of your time. We're sort of coming up to the end here, but really, just want to know what's coming up next for you, Robert. Obviously, doing a lot of work on Entrepreneurs Dinner. I think I can see on the background a bit of on the wall. You've got a bit of some mapping out for what you're up to in terms of the business. But yeah, what's coming up for you for the next at least year or just in the future?
Yeah. I know we'll be looking at Entrepreneurs Dinner and the next evolution of it, scaling it. So what that looks like for the dinners themselves, the potential of having the dinners and having this great experience where entrepreneurs are able to form partnerships to reach their goals faster, to meet some life-changing mentors, to meet other like-minded entrepreneurs, but also expand upon that and
Mm-hmm.
taking it outside the dinner, but potentially doing 2 or 3 day experiences where we have the dinner plus an opportunity for people to somewhat mastermind and connect with each other and bring in speakers who are earning 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures in their businesses, and being able to share that experience, that knowledge, that insight with other entrepreneurs who are coming behind them, and have them coming to our events and sharing that with other people. So that's one thing that we're looking at on the horizon. Just potentially seeing other ways to bring value to our community, to bring value to entrepreneurs, so that we can do that in a way that aligns with our mission, and continue to grow. Also, I've been working with some people individually on basically a way to help early stage entrepreneurs as well as entrepreneurial employees. So entrepreneurs, people who innovate inside a business, or who want to, who work a full-time job but also want to break away and eventually start their own business. I work with these individuals to accomplish their most important goals systematically. And so what that looks like is helping them to organize, to be more effective and efficient, to develop a process and rather follow a system that helps them to accomplish their most important goals, so that they have a level of calm, have a level of freedom in order to move forward. So I'll continue working with individuals, and I don't market that online, but I love working with and helping the right people. So
Mm-hmm.
people who are interested in working with me can reach out to me. on any of the platforms, whether it's Facebook, looking me up by Robert James Collier, or Instagram, finding me on there, Robert J. Collier, Robert James Collier, and working with individuals there. And then outside of that, I'm not sure. We'll have to see what happens. But those are kind of the two of the things that I'm looking forward to right now in terms of the next evolution of business.
I love it. Big things happening. So is there anything that I haven't asked you, or anything that you really just want to make sure you pass on to the audience before we finish up here, Robert?
No, I think you've done a great job with asking me the questions that you have, and obviously you've like thoroughly researched out. So I appreciate that, like being able to come to a conversation where some of the things that I've experienced, I've done, and you've clearly like done your homework. So I really appreciate that. I think the only thing I'd leave is, for entrepreneurs who either feel lonely, or they want to connect with other like-minded entrepreneurs who want to grow their business, and who have the experience and have grown their business, and just simply want to meet some mentors that can help to see around the curve, who can help to give them the answers before they have to learn on their own, and kind of bump their heads. If any of those are of interest, then check out Entrepreneurs Dinner. We have these great events, and I'd love to meet you. I'd love to meet more of the people who want to grow their business. And so, if that's a person listening out there who wants to go, they can always go to entrepreneursdinner.com. That's entrepreneur with an S at the end, dinner.com. And there's a video there that shows one of our past dinners. One I think that's on the 75-foot catamaran yacht. But if there's interest there, I'd love to meet and speak with people and help them to grow their business.
I love it. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. So I'll make sure that all the website links to Entrepreneurs Dinner and all your contact links for people to connect with you are all linked up in the show notes so that people can easily find you. But yeah, guys listening, check out Entrepreneurs Dinner. It's an amazing initiative. You can't even call it a networking event. It's so much more than that. And I actually know personally someone who's attended one of those events, and he had nothing but good things to say about it. So make sure you check it out, and watch the video of the previous dinner, and contact Robert if it's something that you're interested in. So yeah, Robert, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This was a really fascinating conversation. I feel like we could have kept talking for another hour or two probably, but yeah, thank you so much for your time today. It was really a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, thank you, James. I appreciate you connecting with me, and awesome conversation. Like you said, we could have kept talking, man. So thanks for the thoughtful questions and the great conversation.
Cool. And thanks everyone for tuning in today and listening, and make sure you have a great day. Go check out Robert's stuff and Entrepreneurs Dinner, and we'll speak soon.